I've lived in this house for 42 years. Every plank in the floorboards knows the sound of my limp, and every crack in the ceiling has a story I could tell you if I had the breath for it. My late husband, Wayne, and I paid for this place with sweat and overtime shifts at the plant. It wasn't a mansion, just a sturdy brick house on a dry patch of Texas earth, shaded by a pecan tree that was just a twig when we moved in. Now, that tree is gnarled and stiff, just like my hands. I sat in my recliner, the leather worn smooth where my head always rested, listening to the silence. Well, it wasn't really silence. It was the heavy, suffocating quiet of being a burden in your own home. My son, Travis, and his wife Kendra had moved in 6 months ago. "To help you, Mama," Travis had said. But help feels a lot different than what was happening now. Help doesn't make you feel small. Help doesn't make you afraid to go into your own kitchen to pour a glass of sweet tea. My arthritis was flaring up with the coming rain, a deep ache in my hips that made standing up a chore. I gripped the armrests, pushing myself up, needing to use the restroom down the hall. As I shuffled past the guest room, which was now their office, the door was cracked just an inch. I heard Kendra's voice, low and sharp, like the hiss of a radiator. "I don't know how much longer, Travis. She's just lingering." That word hung in the air like smoke. Lingering. As if I were a bad smell that wouldn't clear out of the curtains. I froze in the hallway, my hand trembling against the wall for support. I held my breath, waiting for my son to defend me. I waited for him to say, "That's my mother you're talking about," or, "She built this life for us." But there was only the sound of him typing on a keyboard. The silence from him hurt worse than the venom from her. Later that evening, I was in the kitchen trying to open a jar of pickles. My grip strength had left me years ago. Kendra walked in, her heels clicking loudly on the linoleum I used to scrub on my hands and knees. She watched me struggle for a full minute before sighing, a loud, exaggerated exhale that made my face burn with shame. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Ruth," she snapped, snatching the jar from my hands. "You're too slow. We're going to be eating dinner at midnight at this pace." She popped the lid with a twist and slammed it on the counter. "Honestly, you're getting so forgetful and clumsy. It's exhausting watching you try to function." I looked at Travis, who was sitting at the table reading a magazine. He didn't look up. He just turned the page, ignoring the fear in my eyes as I realized I was disappearing in plain sight. The calendar on the wall said October 14th. It was a Tuesday. I sat at the small round table in the breakfast nook, staring at the hands of the clock ticking by. Tick, tick, tick. I had put on my nice blue blouse, the one with the pearl buttons, and I had combed my gray hair until it lay flat and neat. I had even put on a little lipstick, a shade called Dusty Rose that Wayne used to like. I waited all morning for the phone to ring. I thought maybe my old friend Eleanor would call, but she had passed last winter. I thought maybe my grandson, who was away at college, would remember, but young folks have busy lives. Mostly, I waited for the two people living under my roof to notice. Travis walked through the kitchen at 7 a.m., grabbed coffee, and muttered about traffic. Kendra didn't even look at me. By 6 p.m., the sun was dipping low, casting long, lonely shadows across the floor. I hadn't cooked dinner because I foolishly thought they might bring something home. A pizza? A cupcake? Anything. I heard the garage door rumble open. They walked in, carrying takeout bags from a burger joint. 2 bags, 2 drinks. "Did you eat, Mom?" Travis asked, not looking at me. "No," I whispered. "There's leftovers in the fridge," Kendra said, walking past me. Later that night, I opened the freezer to get some ice for my aching knee. Pushed in the back, behind a bag of frozen peas, was a store-bought cake. It was still in the plastic, frozen solid. They had bought it, thrown it in there, and forgotten. It started with the furniture. One day, I came back from my short walk to the mailbox to find my favorite reading chair, the one perfectly molded to my back, shoved into the corner of the dining room. In its place sat a sleek, modern lamp that looked cold and sharp. When I asked about it, Kendra just waved her hand dismissively. "It cluttered the flow, Ruth. We need space to breathe in here." Then it was the hallway closet. My winter coats, my rain boots, the box of Wayne's old hats all gone, replaced with Kendra's yoga mats and Travis's golf clubs. "We're just organizing," they said. But it didn't feel like organizing. It felt like erasing. They stopped setting a place for me at the dinner table. They'd eat in front of the television, laughing at sitcoms, while I ate soup alone in the kitchen like a servant. One afternoon, I was napping in my bedroom, the door slightly ajar. I woke up to the sound of Kendra in the hallway, talking on her cell phone. Her voice was bright and cheery, a tone she never used with me. "Oh, I know, girl. The house has great bones. We have so many renovation plans. We're just waiting. You know, once she's finally gone, we'll finally have the space to do what we want." My chest had been feeling tight for weeks, a squeezing sensation like a giant fist gripping my heart. I kept a bottle of aspirin in my pocket and swallowed them dry when the pain got bad. I didn't tell them. I couldn't tell them. If I told Kendra I was sick, I knew she wouldn't see it as a tragedy. She'd see it as an opportunity. She'd talk about nursing homes. She'd talk about professional care. So, I hid it. I leaned against walls when I felt dizzy. I took shallow breaths when my lungs burned. I learned to mask my grimaces as coughs. But the body keeps score, and mine was losing the game. I was standing at the sink, washing a teacup, when the room suddenly tilted sideways. The yellow curtains Wayne and I had hung up 30 years ago blurred into a smear of light. My hands went numb. The ceramic cup slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor a loud, violent crash. I tried to step back, but my legs were like water. I reached for the counter, missed, and hit the linoleum hard. The pain in my shoulder was sharp, but the darkness closing in on my vision was scarier. I lay there, cheek pressed against the cold tile, staring at a shard of the broken cup. From the living room, I didn't hear footsteps running to help. I heard the volume on the TV go up. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and lights. But the ride to the hospital afterwards, when Travis drove me because the paramedics said I was stable enough, was crystal clear. I sat in the backseat of his truck, clutching my purse to my chest, my arm in a sling. The doctor said it was a cardiac event brought on by stress and dehydration. Travis didn't ask how I was feeling. He gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. "This is great, Mom. Just great," he muttered, staring at the road. "I have a presentation tomorrow. Kendra has her yoga class. Now we have to spend the whole night in the ER waiting room." I shrank down in the seat. "I'm sorry, Travis," I whispered. "I didn't mean to fall." "It's always something," he snapped. Kendra was in the passenger seat, texting rapidly. She didn't turn around. She didn't offer a bottle of water or a kind word. She just tapped her long, manicured fingernails against the screen of her phone. "Well," she said, her voice low but audible enough for me to hear over the hum of the tires. "Maybe this is it. Maybe this will finally solve things. We can't keep playing nursemaid, Travis. It's irresponsible." They left me there. The hospital room was freezing, the kind of cold that settles deep into your bones and makes you shiver from the inside out. The nurses were kind, tucking warm blankets around my feet. But blankets can't fix the chill of abandonment. Travis and Kendra had signed the admission papers and left before I had even been settled into the bed. "We need sleep if we're going to deal with this tomorrow," Kendra had said. I lay awake, listening to the beeping of the monitor next to my head. Beep, beep, beep. It was the only proof that I was still alive. Down the hall, I could hear a family crying, arguing, praying sounds of people who cared. My room was silent. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the little dots. 142. I wondered if Wayne was watching me. I hoped he wasn't. I didn't want him to see me like this, so small, so unwanted. I reached for the plastic pitcher of water on the tray table, my hand shaking, and took a sip. It tasted like plastic and sorrow. Around 2 a.m., a night nurse with kind eyes and tired shoulders came in to check my vitals. She looked at the empty chairs beside my bed. She looked at the lack of flowers, the lack of coats, the lack of people. "Honey," she asked softly, adjusting my IV drip, "do you have any family coming? Someone I should call?" By noon the next day, the silence was deafening. The doctors had run tests, poked me with needles, and asked me questions about my diet and my stress levels. I lied about the stress. How do you tell a stranger that your son looks at you like a broken appliance he can't return? I reached for the corded phone on the bedside rail. My fingers fumbled with the buttons as I dialed Travis's cell number. I knew it by heart. I had paid the bill for that phone for 10 years when he was starting his business. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Yeah? He sounded breathless, annoyed. Travis? My voice was a croak. It's Mama. The doctor said they might keep me another night. I need my other glasses. And maybe my slippers? Mom, seriously? He sighed loud and long. We are swamped right now. I can't just drop everything to drive across town for slippers. You're in a hospital. You don't need slippers. Please, son, I'm scared. Stop being dramatic. We'll come when we come. Before he hung up, I heard it. In the background, clear as a bell. The clinking of silverware on plates. The sound of laughter, Kendra's high-pitched laugh. And then the sizzle of fajitas. They were at their favorite Mexican restaurant. They weren't swamped. They were having lunch. It was 2 days before I saw a familiar face. The door to my room pushed open, and Kendra walked in. She wasn't carrying a bag of clothes. She wasn't holding flowers. She was holding a clipboard and a pen. She looked fresh, her hair blown out perfect, wearing a new jacket I recognized from a catalog I used to read. She didn't say hello. She walked right to the foot of the bed and looked at me like a teacher looking at a misbehaving student. Well, Ruth, you're looking stable, she said, her tone flat. Where's Travis? I asked, trying to sit up straighter, trying to salvage some dignity. Parking. He hates the garage here. She tapped the pen against the clipboard. Look, we need to be realistic. This little episode proves you can't handle the house anymore. It's too much upkeep. Too much dust. I can handle it, I argued weakly. I just got dizzy. No, you can't. She cut me off. We've been talking. While you're in here resting, we decided to do some deep cleaning. Make the place sanitary. We're clearing things out while you're here so you don't have to worry about the mess. My stomach dropped. Cleaning? What kind of cleaning? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Just getting rid of the junk, Ruth, the old papers, the dusty boxes. You don't need all that clutter dragging you down. My things aren't junk, I whispered. To you, maybe. To us, it's a fire hazard. She checked her watch. We're doing you a favor. Kendra left 10 minutes later. She hadn't even sat down. An hour passed, and my phone buzzed on the bedside table. It was Mrs. Gable, my neighbor of 30 years. Mrs. Gable was a nosy woman. God bless her. But right now, her nosiness was my lifeline. Ruth, honey, are you okay? The text read. Why is there a dumpster in your driveway? My heart hammered against my ribs. I typed back with shaking thumbs. Send me a picture. Please. A moment later, the image loaded on my screen. I gasped, a sound that made the nurse in the hallway pause. There, on the concrete driveway Wayne had poured himself, was a mountain of my life. Black trash bags were piled high. But it wasn't just bags. I saw my sewing machine, the one my mother gave me. I saw the wooden rocking chair I nursed Travis in, tipped over on its side. And there, lying in a puddle of mud from the morning rain, was the quilt. The double wedding ring quilt I had spent 2 years stitching by hand. It was purple and cream, my masterpiece. It was soaking wet, treated like garbage. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the phone screen, zooming in until the pixels blurred. I felt a tear slide down my nose and land on the screen. They aren't cleaning, I realized. They are evicting me. Another buzz. Mrs. Gable sent another photo. This one was blurry, taken through her blinds. It showed Kendra walking down the driveway. She was carrying a wooden box. My mahogany jewelry box. The one with the velvet lining where I kept my grandmother's brooch and Wayne's wedding ring. She wasn't putting it in her car for safekeeping. She was walking toward the large green trash bin at the curb. Panic, hot and sharp, shot through me. That box held the only things of value I had left to pass down. Or so they thought. My mind raced. I closed my eyes and pictured my bedroom. The closet. The carpet in the far corner. Beneath the heavy cedar chest they probably hadn't moved yet. The safe. I stopped crying. My heart was still racing, but the rhythm changed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was focus. They didn't know about the safe. Wayne was a paranoid man in his later years, afraid of banks and burglars. In 1995, he had installed a floor safe in the master closet. He cut the subfloor himself, welded the box, and covered it with a loose floorboard and a piece of carpet tacked down with undetectable nails. When Wayne died, I never told Travis. Travis was good with his hands but bad with money. He had a hole in his pocket where cash just fell out. I knew if he knew about the safe, he'd pester me until it was empty. So it stayed a secret. Inside that cold steel box sat the original deed to the house, paid off and solely in my name. There were savings bonds Wayne bought in the 80 seconds that had matured to a hefty sum. There was cash, stacked in neat bundles. And there was the insurance policy. A whole life policy I'd been paying on since 1970. I gripped the bedsheets. If Kendra found that safe, she wouldn't throw it away. She'd crack it open. Just then, a text came in from Kendra. "Don't worry about the bedroom. We're changing a few things around here to make room for a hospital bed. It'll be better for you." I was plotting my escape when a woman in a gray suit walked in. She held a thick file folder and looked at me with professional pity. "Mrs. Miller, I'm the hospital social worker. I wanted to chat with you about your discharge plan." "I'm going home," I said firmly. "Tomorrow." She hesitated, opening the folder. "Well, that's the thing. Your daughter-in-law, Kendra, was down here earlier. She requested paperwork regarding long-term placement facilities, assisted living. She mentioned that the home environment is no longer safe for you and that, well, she claimed you agreed to surrender the property to them for renovation." The room spun. "Surrender?" "She asked for the forms to transfer power of attorney, Mrs. Miller. She said your dementia is progressing rapidly." "I don't have dementia." My voice rose, cracking. "I had a fall. I know exactly who I am. I know what day it is." The social worker paused, looking at me closely. She saw the clarity in my eyes. She closed the folder slowly. "She said you were confused," the woman whispered. Then she leaned in closer. "Mrs. Miller, did you authorize any of this?" "No," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I authorized nothing." The social worker left, promising to flag my file, but the clock was ticking. I picked up my phone again. A notification from my bank popped up. Security alert. Failed login attempt. I tapped on it. Someone had tried to access my checking account online. They had failed the password 3 times. I looked at the location of the IP address. It wasn't a hacker in a foreign country. It was from my home address. Kendra was trying to drain the liquid cash before they shoved me into a home, looking for money to pay for those renovations she was bragging about on the phone. She thought I was a senile old woman who used password 123. She didn't know I used the name of the first dog Wayne and I ever had, followed by the year we got him. They were moving fast. They thought I was stuck in this bed, helpless. They thought they had won. I started to cry. Not the soft, weeping kind of cry, but the ugly, gasping kind. A nurse, a different one from before, came rushing in. She was older, maybe 60, with streaks of gray in her hair and a no-nonsense walk. Now, what's this?" she asked, handing me a tissue. "They're stealing everything," I choked out. "My son. His wife. They're throwing my life in the trash and trying to take my money." The nurse didn't dismiss me. She didn't pat my head. She pulled up a chair and sat down. "Honey, I've seen this 1,000 times. You have 2 choices. You can lie here and let them, or you can show them who the matriarch is." She looked at my chart. "Your vitals are stable. The doctor hasn't signed the discharge yet, but you're alert and oriented. You have the right to leave against medical advice if you have safe transport." I wiped my eyes. "I don't have a car. They drove me." "I get off shift in 20 minutes, the nurse said, checking her watch. "My name is Betty. I drive a beat-up Ford, but it'll get you there." I looked at her, this stranger showing me more kindness in 5 minutes than my family had in 5 years. "I need to get home," I whispered. "Today." Betty drove like a woman on a mission. We pulled onto my street just as the sun was starting to set, casting a golden, bloody light over the neighborhood. My stomach twisted into knots as my house came into view. It looked wrong. The front porch, usually cluttered with my potted ferns, was bare. The rocking chairs were gone, and through the big bay window of the living room, I saw bright, garish floral curtains I had never bought. They had already redecorated. I hadn't even been gone 48 hours. Betty idled the car at the curb. "You sure you want to do this alone, Ruth?" "I have to," I said, unbuckling the belt with my good arm. "Thank you, Betty." I stepped out onto the sidewalk. My knees shook, but I forced them to lock. I walked up the driveway, past the oil stain from Travis's truck. I could hear music coming from inside. Upbeat pop music. And laughter. Loud, celebrating laughter. Then I heard Kendra's voice, clear through the screen door. "God, it looks so much better already. I told you, Travis. Out with the old, in with the new." I reached for the front doorknob. Locked. I rang the doorbell. Ding-dong. The laughter inside stopped abruptly. I waited. I heard footsteps approach the door, then stop. The peephole darkened as someone looked out. "Who is it?" Travis's voice muffled. "It's your mother," I shouted. "Open this door." Silence. Then whispering. Then Kendra's voice. Closer to the wood. "Travis, don't open it. She's supposed to be at the hospital. She's confused. Call the facility." "I am not confused," I yelled, banging on the wood with my fist. "This is my house. Open the door." They didn't move. They were going to pretend I wasn't there. They were going to wait me out, call the authorities, tell them I had escaped. "Ruth!" A voice came from the yard next door. Mrs. Gable was standing by the hedge, her face pale. She waved me over frantically. "Ruth, come here. You need to see this." I hobbled over to the side of the house, near the trash cans where Mrs. Gable was pointing. The smell hit me first. Mildew and stale coffee. There, stacked like garbage, were 20 black industrial trash bags. Some had ripped open. I saw my photo albums, the ones with Travis's baby pictures spilling out into the dirt. I saw the letters Wayne wrote me from Vietnam, bundled with a rubber band, soaking up water from the wet ground. I saw my clothes, my Sunday dresses, my gardening shoes. Everything I owned that made me me was sitting by the curb for the garbage truck to pick up in the morning. I felt a scream building in my throat, but it died when I saw one of the bags moving. Just a slight rustle. I leaned down and undid the knot. Inside, nestled among my old wool sweaters, was Mr. Whiskers, my porcelain cat statue. It wasn't alive, of course, but seeing it there, wrapped in my sweaters like a dead body, broke something inside me. They hadn't just thrown out my things. They had thrown out my dignity. I stood up. The sadness was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve that I hadn't felt since I buried my husband. I wasn't going to ring the doorbell again. I walked around to the back of the house, to the garden shed. It was locked, but I knew the trick with the loose hinge. I pulled a rusty spade from the wall. Beneath a loose brick in the foundation, covered by dirt and 30 years of secrecy, was a small brass key. Wayne had put it there in '82. "Just in case," he'd said. "In case we get locked out, and the world goes to hell." Well, the world had gone to hell. I wiped the dirt off the key and walked to the back door. It was stiff, but I jammed the key in and turned. The lock clicked with a heavy thud. I opened the door and stepped into the kitchen. The air smelled of paint and cleaning chemicals. Kendra was standing by the refrigerator, holding a bottle of wine. Travis was leaning on the counter. They both turned. Kendra dropped the wine glass. It shattered, spraying red liquid across the floor like blood. "How did she get in?" Kendra gasped, backing up against the fridge. "I live here," I said. My voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "And I see you've been busy." Travis looked at me, his eyes wide and terrified. He looked at the sling on my arm, the hospital bracelet still on my wrist. "Mom, we were just..." "Just what?" I asked, stepping over the broken glass. "Throwing my life away? Changing the locks? Waiting for me to die? You needed a clean start." Kendra screamed, her shock turning into defensive anger. "Look at this place, Ruth. It was a tomb. We're making it livable. You should have stayed gone. You belong in a home where people can take care of you." "I have a home," I said, staring her down. "And I took care of myself long before you were born, little girl." Travis looked at his wife, then at me. He opened his mouth, closed it, and looked at his shoes. Coward. I'm going to my room, I said. There's nothing in there. Kendra spat. We emptied it. Not everything, I said. I walked past them. I didn't look back. The bedroom was unrecognizable. My bed was gone. The carpet was stripped bare in spots. Boxes of their junk were stacked against the walls. But the closet was still there. I walked in. They had ripped out my clothes rack. The floor was bare plywood where they had pulled up the carpet to replace it. But they hadn't started laying the new floor yet. I fell to my knees. The pain shot through my legs. But I ignored it. I crawled to the back corner. The loose board was still there, dusty and unassuming. I jammed my fingernails into the crack and pried it up. It groaned and popped loose. Below it, the gray steel of the safe glinted in the dim light. I heard footsteps behind me. Kendra stood in the doorway, her mouth falling open. What is that? She whispered. She looked at the heavy steel box sunk into the foundation. She looked at the dial. I spun the dial. Right to 18. Left to 4. Right to 22. Click. I pulled the heavy handle up. The door swung open. It was all there. The deed, yellowed with age but legally binding, with only my name on the title. The stack of savings certificates Wayne had bought, now worth more than the house itself. The cash, 3 bundles of thousands. And the file labeled, Travis. I reached in and pulled out the papers. I turned around, sitting on the floor with my treasures in my lap. Kendra's eyes were glued to the cash. Is that real money? She took a step forward, her greed overpowering her anger. Ruth, we can use that. We can use that for the renovations. For your care. No, I said. I held up the deed. This says the house is mine, paid in full. Then I held up the credit card statements I had printed out months ago and hidden in here. And this, I said, looking at Travis who had appeared behind her. This proves you opened 3 credit cards in my name, Kendra. That's fraud. Travis went pale. Mom, you knew about that? I know everything, I said. I just didn't want to believe my own son would let it happen. I stood up, using the wall for support. I clutched the papers to my chest. I think it's time you leave, I said. Both of you. They didn't leave willingly. Kendra screamed. She cried. She threatened to sue me for competency. She claimed they had tenants' rights. So I called the sheriff. Sheriff Miller, no relation, had known Wayne since high school. When his cruiser pulled up, lights flashing, the neighborhood curtains twitched. I met him on the porch. I showed him the deed. I showed him the evidence of the credit card fraud. I showed him the text messages from Mrs. Gable about them destroying my property. It's a civil matter mostly, Ruth, the sheriff said gently. But the fraud, that's criminal. And since they aren't on the deed and don't have a lease, he walked inside. I stayed on the porch. I heard Kendra shouting, then crying. I saw Travis walk out first, carrying a bag of clothes, his head hanging low. You didn't have to do this, Ma, he said as he passed me. He looked like a scolded child. We were just trying to help. No, son, I said, my voice breaking. You were trying to bury me. Officers escorted Kendra out. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was pale, shaking, holding her purse tight. She looked at me with pure hatred, but she didn't say a word. The shame of the neighbors watching was finally enough to silence her. The house was quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't the silence of being ignored. It was the silence of peace. I sat at the kitchen table. The floor was still sticky from the wine. The curtains were still ugly. But it was mine. I pulled a notepad from my purse. My hand shook, but I wrote the words clearly. Travis, I loved you before I ever saw your face. I wiped your tears, paid for your college, and welcomed your wife. But love isn't a license to abuse. You broke my heart, not by leaving, but by staying and watching me disappear. I am changing my will tomorrow. The money in the safe will go to your son for his education, in a trust you cannot touch. The house will be sold when I pass, and the money donated to the senior center. So no other old woman has to sit in the dark waiting for a phone call. Don't come back. I forgive you because I have to for my own soul. But I won't let you hurt me again. Love. Mom. I left the letter on the table. Then I packed a small bag. I wasn't staying here tonight. The air was too heavy. I called Mrs. Gable. "Ida," I said, "is that guest room of yours still open?" I'm sitting on Mrs. Gable's porch now. The Texas sun is setting, painting the sky in purples and oranges, just like my ruined quilt. My hip hurts. My arm is sore. I am an old woman with a broken heart and a messy house to clean up. But I am safe. And I am free. I look at my hands wrinkled, spotted, shaking. These hands built a life. They deserved better than to be thrown away. It's hard to cut off your own blood. It's the hardest thing a mother can do. You keep hoping they'll change. You keep making excuses. He's tired. She's stressed. But eventually, you have to look at the pile of trash bags on the curb and realize they showed you who they are. Believe them. I took a sip of iced tea and looked out at the street. I don't know how many years I have left. Maybe 5, maybe 10. But they will be my years. I won't be lingering. I'll be living. So I ask you, looking at this screen, with your own parents maybe getting older, or maybe you're the one feeling invisible in your own home, what would you have done if your own family tried to erase you? Would you stay quiet? Or would you open the safe,